Hi, today we are going to talk about the basics of Azure Authentication and Authorization. In- in today's agenda, I will give you the background around the authentication and authorization. I will explain you the OAuth 2.0 authentication. We'll also discuss about OpenID Connect and we'll see a demo on how this authentication and authorization works. So today, when you try to log into any Office 365 product, you see this screen. Once you provide your credentials, you are authenticated, and either you want to access Outlook, a SharePoint site, a planner. This is the screen what you see. Not only that, there are multiple websites these days which shows this kind of uh, identity providers for login. You can log into these websites either using Facebook, login, Google, LinkedIn, or Twitter. So those are the identity providers where uh, you provide the credentials of either Facebook or Google, and you're able to log in uh, into this sites. So how does this work, and what was the reason that this is introduced? Um, Going back uh, in the early days when the web applications were developed, forms-based authentication was the standard authentication mechanism used. So once you enter your username and password, uh, that is validated against the username and password saved in the database. And once it matches, um, a session is created and a cookie is created. It is dropped into the browser, and that will give the access to the application. So from the early days till 2006 2007, this really worked, and this was the standard which was used during those days. uh, but by 2006 2007 there was another different use cases which were there, which were not satisfied using this authentication mechanisms. Say for example, mobile applications. People started using mobile applications, and using this authentication was really not helpful. Also, there was use cases where there were different applications where one application is trying to get authenticated against the other applications. And in those scenarios, also, forms authentication was really not a good solution. So, considering all this, the identity management experts went back and they designed a protocol, a standard protocol where which can be used where one application can be authenticated using a different identity provider. And this gave to the birth of OAuth 2.0. So let's talk about the details of OAuth 2.0, what exactly that is, and how the flow works. Okay, so in OAuth world, the OAuth protocol basically has different entities. Let's talk about that. So, in the OAuth world, we have a resource owner who is the actual user, the client. We have the web application. Uh, we have an authorization server. We have a resource owner. We have a resource server. Uh, the type of grant, uh, it is called the authorization grant. The redirect URI. Okay, we have the access token, scopes, and we have the consent, whether the user, whether we provide the consent, whether it is accepted or it is a yes no user consent. So uh, these are the entities and terminologies which are used in an OAuth flow. Okay, before I explain you the complete flow, I would like to show you an application. And this application will be the basis of our discussion. And first, I'll show you the demo of the application, and then we'll get into the details of each of these components of authorization and authentication. So let me go back here, and so this is a local application which is on my local machine, and from here I will be using the Azure Active Directory to log in, and I will try to connect to my OneDrive and get the files from my OneDrive. Okay, so this will actually connect to Azure Active Directory with this credential, and it is trying to pull the information from OneDrive as well as Active Directory from OneDrive, and uh, the email address and the Active Directory is yes. So let me go ahead and type the okay. So here we are seeing that I'm logged in now. I can click on details, and I can see all the files which are extracted from my OneDrive. So this is the application which is developed. It is using the identity and OAuth flow for identification, okay, for the authorization, authentication as well as the authorization. So going back to my slide, let me explain you how this flow works. Okay. So consider that this is my local application which wants the user to be authenticated. So what it does is whenever it what it does is with this, it is with this redirect URI, it sends some parameters to the identity server, the authorization server. So the request goes like this with this uh, URL. It sends multiple parameters. It is redirect URI, the response type, the user, and so on and so forth. So uh, once this request is sent to authorization server, a screen is displayed where the user can enter their credentials. Okay. As soon as you enter your credentials, the user verifies those against the Azure Active Directory. So this is your authorization server. So it authorizes whether the username and password which are entered are valid and the user exists. And if that user exists, based on this scope, like here we are requesting user.read. So this is the scope for which we are requesting. So based for this scope, it checks whether the permissions are available. If the permissions are already granted, it will not show you this screen. The permissions are usually granted by the administrator, and if not, then it will show you this screen where the user can here we have three permissions: read all users, send mail, and read your files. So this screen is displayed to the resource owner. So basically what is happening here is this user is validated, and it is you need to consent whether this application can access your mails, your basic profile, and your files. Once you click yes on this, it sends an auth code, that is an authorization code. This is a hashed code which is sent to the application. So this application, what it does is it takes that auth code and sends back the same auth code, sends it back to the authorization server to for the request of access token. So once the once this is sent, the authorization server validates the auth code and return back the access token. So this access token is the key to access the resources. So once you have this access token, you need not need anything else. So this resource server only identifies the and provides you the details what you have requested using this access token. So once you take that key and go back to the resource server and ask the resources. Say, for example, you are requesting here to read the basic profile. So all the information which is requested, you can request it. In the Azure world, it is requested using the Microsoft Graph APIs. So using that API, you can call the resource server, and with this access token, you can get the requested resource. So you might ask to get permission to send emails, or you can ask permissions to request files, or you can ask the user's profile, or anything and everything. So this access is governed in the Azure app registration, where an app registration is done and you grant some certain permissions. So the resource server verifies that permission, and once those permissions are verified, it responds back with the needed uh, resources. Say, for example, emails or files. Okay. So let me show you that in action. So say, for example, once you log in, this is the screen what you see is displayed. This is the URL what is displayed, and it has multiple parameters to it. So this is like it goes to the authorization server. It sends your tenant ID. It sends the redirect URI. It sends the scope for which you are requesting, and it also sends the response type. So what exactly it is requesting. So once this request is sent to the authorization server, in our case, that in the Azure world, it is an Azure Active Directory, which is authenticating the credentials. So once it is sent to authorization server, the authorization server takes all these parameters and checks the username and password. And once that those are checked, once the username and passwords are checked using these parameters, it sends a successful response. So the in the response, it sends back you the code, and it also sends you the scope. Okay, so here it sends the user.read, and also it sends a token, an auth code, and after that an access token. So access token has all the necessary information and permissions, which using which you can request the resource server whatever resources are required. Okay, so let me go back to the application and show you the flow how it goes. What we'll try to do is we'll try to access a SharePoint site. Okay, now I think it will go. See, you can see here now it is validated. Uh, because we already have entered the credentials, but it is validated. But this is how it looks. Okay, it will send you initially. This is what it is. It sends a tenant ID. I have it in my screen here. So these are the different parameters which are sent. So whenever you open uh, the screen, when you try to access a SharePoint site or any other Microsoft Office 365 products, these are the parameters which are sent. Sends the client ID, it sends the response type it is required, a redirect URI, and the other parameters which are there. Okay, so based on these parameters, a request is sent back, and the users are authenticated. Okay, in case if the credentials you have requested, or the resource if you have requested, the credentials you have provided, if those credentials are incorrect, it it sends you the error description. So either the credentials are invalid, or say the resource what you're requesting, it is you don't have permissions on that, you get an error response in this format. This is the whole URL, and along with that there is a description of what is the error that has occurred. So this is the error response you've got. So going back to the story, which I was telling you about the authentication and authorization. So using this OAuth, uh, the users are able to use the identity management, the identity providers which are external. Say, for example, if you have Google, Facebook, Twitter, these are the identity providers which are there available. So using those identity providers, you can validate the user. The user can enter their credentials, and once those credentials are entered, you can get login to the website and access the websites. That way, the auth flow works. You must have seen on your Facebook pages multiple applications like Candy Crush application, or some kind of photo editing applications are available. So these applications use the auth flow. So using the Facebook credentials, what it does is it requests your permissions. So the request goes to the authorization server, it validates the credential, and it also checks the access, what access needs to be provided. So it will prompt you a prompt saying that this application is trying to access your say profiles, contacts, or would like to post on your uh, Facebook wall. And if you grant yes, if you access grant permission to that, then that application will be able to access your contacts and send messages to your contacts. So this is how this OAuth 2.0 flow works. So this flow was working properly, and the this was very successful, and it became an industry standard, and it was used widely by all the applications, because use your identity versus your identity management, where applications are separate. So the issue what we had in forms authentication, where there was maintenance issue, there was security related issues to maintain the users, and to maintain the database where the users are saved, and change and apply the policies against it. So those forms authentication issues were resolved using auth 2.0. Yeah, but with all these, it started, people started using it widely, but there are some problems with auth 2.0 authentication. Okay, so once the user is authenticated, there is no standard way to get the user's information. So say for example, you've started using login with Google, and login with Twitter, and logging with LinkedIn. So these are the three buttons which are available. So all of those, once the user is logged in, they used to send back the response. But the response which was sent back, it was not in the standard format. So everyone implemented their own implementation of sending back the response. So Facebook had its own way to send, and Google had its own way. So what happened is, when say for example you are using an application, so the application, let's say you are using an application called Spotify. In Spotify, you used sign in with Google, okay, and it went back. It got your it got authenticated, and it sent back your profile information. But similarly, there is another button with login with Facebook. So there, similar thing happened, but the response which was sent by Google and Facebook, you are you had to write two different implementations to get the response, because Google was sending the response in a different format versus the Facebook was sending the response in the different format. So to address that, uh, there was no no standard way of getting the user's response, since every implementation was little different, and also there was no common set of scope, you know like it is like basic profile and contacts or user dot read or only. So everybody defined their own scopes. So if you call my Google, yeah, they had their own scopes, whereas if you call Facebook, it had its own scopes. Even in the Azure world, uh, when this OAuth 2.0 was, Azure world came very late in the party, but overall, this was the challenges they had in OAuth 2.0, where there were no common set of scopes. So to address that, uh, OpenID Connect was introduced. Okay, so OpenID the OpenID Connect, it is a simple identity layer built on top of OAuth 2.0 protocol. So OpenID is not uh, a replacement of OAuth 2.0. It is just an extension of what OAuth 2.0 is implemented. Okay, it defines this OAuth 2.0 defines the mechanism to obtain the access token of the protected resources, but they do not define the standard methods to provide the identity information. So to address that, OpenID Connect implements authentication as an extension to the OAuth 2.0 authorization process. Okay, it provides information about the end user in the form of an ID token. So once this was implemented, the OpenID Connect was implemented. Uh, it was implemented with the sense that the uh, identity of the user is sent in a standard format. Okay, so that standard format, it is sent as an ID token. uh, this OpenID Connect verifies the identity of the user and provides the basic profile information about the user. Okay, so once the user is logged in, it sends the basic profile. So as I said, it's an extension of the OAuth for authentication. You'll also get a user info endpoint in OpenID Connect, and we have standard set of scopes, and it is a standardized implementation. So when OAuth 2.0 were having so many issues, the identity manager experts, identity management experts, they went back and they went to the drawing board. They came back with this OpenID Connect with to resolve the issues what OAuth 2.0 has. And once this was resolved, we have this OpenID Connect where it provides now the roles of these two protocols is defined. OAuth 2.0 is for authorization, whereas OpenID Connect is for authentication. Once you are authenticated, the granular level scopes, uh, like you can have read access, or you can have write access, you can have send mail access. So that which is defined in Azure, in the Azure app registration, that is done using OAuth 2.0. Whereas when once you are logged in, your credentials are verified against the Azure Active Directory. Those are used. Those are that is done by the OpenID Connect protocol. Okay, so let me give you the flow of how it goes. Okay, so all other the uh, everything remains the same in the OpenID Connect world as well. Okay, we have the same players here. We have a client, we have an authorization server, we have, so once from the client requests uh, authentication to authorization server, instead of sending the response type and scope, you can see there is a difference in the scope. Earlier, this is the only parameter which is changed in OpenID Connect. So when you are sending for when you are trying to log into any of the systems, it sends scope as OpenID profile. So with this OpenID profile, the authorization server understands it with this OpenID profile. It authenticates against Azure Active Directory, and for the code what is required, it consents with the user, and it sends back the authorization code. And once the authorization codes are sent, the identity of the user, you can get it from the ID token which is sent by the OpenID Connect protocol. So using that ID Connect ID token, you can find the username of that who has logged in and what is the information for that. You can use this token, the auth token, against and get the access token. And once you get the access token, you can talk with the resource server using graph.microsoft.com and get the requested whatever required access you have. In my case, here we are connecting to the OneDrive and getting the files from the OneDrive in this application. Okay, so let me show you a demo of all of this flow, and that will give you a clear understanding. So let's go back and let's have a demo. Okay, So I explained you that when the SharePoint site is requested, these are the different parameters which are sent. Okay. Uh, Let me go back and sign out. Okay. Let me open another window. And here I'll just go ahead and open another window so that I can show you the flow from the beginning. Okay. So now I'm requesting this my local site. Okay. Here we don't have the user is not logged in. So you are requesting a login. So this request goes to the authorization server. Okay. Now I'm providing the credentials here. So once the user is logged in, you get the username. Okay. And you get, so let me show you, I have in the, with this, it is trying to log into the, uh, get my OneDrive files. Okay. If you go to developer tool, uh, I have logged in that user's access token, which is written back. So let me show you the access token. So the access tokens are usually written back using the, this is written back as an JWT token. It is called JSON Web Token. It is this JSON Web Token uh, has all the information what is needed. Let me take this from here. And I'll go to the a tool which decodes the JWT token. Okay. Let me take that to the notepad first. So here you can see that this is the application. This is the display name. This is the this. It has three sections. It has the header, it has the payload, and it has the signature. Okay, in the header it says this is the JWT token it is provided. What is the name of the given name and the family name of the user? What kind of scopes are provided? Okay, and here it also gives you the when was the token issued at, when will it expire, and so on and so forth. So using uh, this token is used against the resources, which in my case here we are using a OneDrive, and a Graph API call is made to OneDrive, and you can see those files. Okay, so in the code, what I have done is, if you see the code, this is the API I've called. Okay, and along with that, this is the scope what is sent back. And once this is sent, once this is called, it shows you the login screen for authorization. And once that authorization is done, I have the details list here. So this here a call is made, and so this is what we have. Okay, and a call is made using this graph SDK helper. A call is made to get the files. Okay, so get files, and this is the call which is made to get the files, and with these details. Okay. Let me show you another demo of a simple console application, how this flow exactly works. Okay, so this is a simple console application. Uh, so now it is with these parameters, with these different parameters, it is requesting an access token. Okay, So once I enter that, I get a access token back. Okay, so this is my access token. You can take this access token, go back to the decoder, and you can search it here. Okay, so this decoded token will give you the information that for whom it is. This is a native app, which is the console app which I'm using. This is the user. What is the app address of that? And again, it gives you all the information in that JWT format, JSON Web Token format. And once you get that, using this access token, a call is made in the graph. Using the graph API, a call is made, and the username of that username of the logged in user is provided. So this is the flow what we have, and this is the same flow what is used. Uh, Either you use Google for login, either you use Facebook for login, Twitter, or any other identity providers which are there. This is the standard format, industry-wide standard format, which is used for login, for authentication, and authorization. Uh, I think this will give you a brief understanding that what happens in the background when the screen of for authentication comes in. And if you have any queries or questions, feel free to provide it into comments, and I will make sure that those are answered. Thank you for listening to this session. Good day. Thanks.